Hey y'all, welcome to Microphonic Designs, where we handle everything audio for modern performing arts programs. My name is Andrew, and today I received an order for one of my cabling packages, which is where I set up a front ensemble with all of the cables that they need to connect all their microphones to, their mixer and everything. And I get everything pre-color coded and labeled before I actually box it up and ship the order out. And so I've been doing a bunch of color coding today, and I thought I would go ahead and share just a few thoughts on color coding audio cables for marching front ensembles. And I thought I'd go ahead and share what kind of tape I use, and also just give you some tips on exactly how I apply tape to the ends of a cable. I've got a few different cables to demonstrate that technique on today. I've got a good number of XLR cables to demo on and that I've already gone through. We'll take a look at 1/4-inch cables. I've got some pro tips for you, for those of you out there that utilize the D'Addario Modular Snake system, as well as everybody else that uses the small format snakes or the sub snakes. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about when we get there. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of exactly what tape and all that stuff, I just want to make sure that before you start color coding anything and planning stuff out, make sure you've gone through and tested all of your cables, and you set aside the broken ones, get a list of which ones you need to re-up on, which, hint, hint, I know exactly where you can get them. And also, make sure you plan out exactly where all of the cables are going to go in your front ensemble. So this way, before you even apply any color tape to anything, you'll know exactly what color coding goes on which cable and where that is going to go in your front ensemble. So just make sure you've taken care of your planning before you get any electrical tape out, because I'd hate for you to spend time putting tape on a cable that's broken, or perhaps the plan was a little bit different than you initially thought. So take care of those details and then start to hop into this stuff here. Now, speaking of the tape itself, I have found over the years that this particular kind is at least better than anything else I've tried. So this is the Scotch 35 by 3M. This is the stuff to get for sure. I've tried other brands, and they just don't quite do the trick for me like this stuff does. And I've got a whole stack here. So I use 6 different colors. I like to use red, white, blue, yellow, green, and orange. And I also enjoy the 3/4-inch width. So the 1/2-inch width that you'll get in a multi-pack, so for example, you can find a pack of 5 different colors in the 1/2-inch width. That doesn't work too well. The 1/2-inch width is not quite thick enough to really grab onto the cable, and also I found that it's not quite big enough to be able to be easily and quickly identifiable by a student when they're setting up, taking the field for contest, or even in low light situations. So I like the 3/4-inch version. The 1-inch version is also just a little bit too wide and takes up a little bit too much real estate on the audio connectors themselves. And so again, the 3/4-inch width is the way to go. And I think these rolls are, I think they say they're like 66 feet long, which I go through several rolls of every color every year because I do a lot of audio setups in the summer. But if you invest the money for 6 rolls like this, you'll be set for a long, long time. And this is the stuff that you'll want to have in your audio toolkit for your ensemble. So just like you have your head bag, you want to make sure you've got all of the proper equipment and tools to handle your audio system as well. So I'm going to leave a link in the video description below to the webpage on Lowe's, which is where I picked this tape up from. It's $7 a pop, so $7 per roll. So you're looking at about $50 or so for a pack of 6 plus sales tax, but it's well worth the investment, certainly. And again, if you're buying this just for your ensemble, these 6 rolls are going to last a long time, which is never a bad thing. Now, part of what I really enjoy about this particular tape as well is the fact that there's a certain amount of stretchiness or flex to this particular formula of tape that works really well for helping the tape grab onto the connector of the audio cable and stay on for the duration of the marching season, which is not something a lot of other brands have. I've tried color tape where there's just no flex at all and it's just rigid or it's too thick. Like I think this is, I think it says it's 7 mil. That seems to just work really well for what I use it for. And other tapes that I've tried, it's just, it doesn't have quite as much flexibility and it didn't grab on to the cables as well because of it. Now again, I'm not sponsored by Lowe's or by 3M or Scotch in any way, no affiliation. This is just my honest take on having tried a bunch of tapes over the years, and I just really recommend this stuff. So the link down in the description is not an affiliate link or anything like that. But of course, if you would like to support the channel, do consider dropping a like on this video, subscribing to the channel for more of this type of content, or even better yet, visit our website and get in touch and have us help support your program with any and all audio needs that you may have. So I've gone ahead and changed the camera angle so we can take a look at how to actually put our electrical tape on the different connector types. And so we'll start out with just a regular old XLR here, and let me increase the brightness here actually. All right, there we go. And I've got my spreadsheet that tells me what color needs to go on these cables. I've labeled these as Marimba 1. We have two 10-foot cables here. So Marimba 1, two 10-foot cables. We're gonna have red and double red for these. So I've got my red tape, which is one of the colors I use most often. And you may be thinking to yourself, well, how are we going to differentiate the two cables? If we have two 10-foot cables and they're both red, how exactly are we going to go about that? Because they're for the same instrument, right? So these are both going to Marimba 1. Well, the answer lies in my single stripe, double stripe system. And I'll kind of show and explain what that is here in a moment. But let's start out with just the regular old single stripe of tape. And a pro tip for you here, these little shoulders on these cables, these can actually come unscrewed. You see that? So these can come unscrewed, and if these come undone like this, your connector can quite literally fall apart. So double check that this little shoulder is screwed in all the way before you start putting colored tape on. Not every cable has that particular design, but these pig hog cables do. And I know like Proco and a bunch of other cables that use these types of connectors do. So just double check that. So for the female connectors, which are the connectors with like the button on there, I like to put a single stripe of tape just below where the button is, which is, I would think, fairly self-explanatory. So again, I'm taking the tape, putting it just below the button and pretty much where the shoulder meets the rest of the connector here. And I like to hold the end down with one thumb, and then you'll see I'm adding tension. I'm stretching that tape out a little bit so that it grabs onto the connector really well. And I'm just going around about 2 times around. So I didn't quite make it around the connector 2 complete times, but I don't like to go too much further than two rounds, and I also don't like to do a single round because I've just found that when the tape can grab onto itself and onto the connector, it helps keep everything on there for longer, which is great. And so we need about 5 to 6 inches of tape, maybe a little bit less, about this long, to wrap around the connector twice. And I totally forgot my scissors, so I'm having to do the old fingernail method here. So for the male connectors, which is the one that has little prongs in there, I like to put the single stripe of tape again exactly where the shoulder here that unscrews meets with the rest of the connector. So I'm going to put it right on there, halfway on both. And again, I'm making sure that end is stuck on there, and then I'm pulling on the tape. I'm flexing it out, making sure there's tension on it while I wrap the tape around. And there we go. Almost 2 times around, which is just fine. That tape's not going anywhere. Again, the idea is to make sure that this tape doesn't go anywhere for the duration of a marching season, whether that's in the fall for marching band or for indoor during WGI season. So here's our second 10-foot cable. And I'm actually looking around. Let me see if I've got scissors anywhere. I don't think I do. All right, went and grabbed some scissors because I do recommend grabbing scissors or your diagonal pliers, your zip tie cutters, because I've done system setups before where like I've done the thumbnail thing all day, and if you do that for your entire front ensemble, oh my gosh, your thumbnail is like your whole finger is going to be so upset. So definitely get you the scissors out. Makes it a lot easier, and I am now ready to go. And of course, I'm so out of shape that just going downstairs to get the scissors, has me out of breath. So here we go. So this cut looks a little bit short, but let's work on our second cable for Marimba 1 here. So again, we're using red tape, but how do we differentiate that from the other cable? Well, we use 2 stripes of tape on the connector, and this is kind of why I was talking about the 3/4 inch width of tape works really well for this, because we need to be able to easily identify what color it is from a longer distance away from the cable, which is why the 1/2 inch thick tape doesn't perform as well. But we also need to make sure that it's 2 distinct strips of tape sitting on the connector. So let's add our first piece here. Again, we're going to start with the male connector here, and we have to keep in mind, right, if we're putting tape on a male XLR connector, it could be that this particular cable needs to plug into a snake or perhaps into the back of a mixer. And so if we put the tape too far towards the end of the connector, it's not going to be able to fit in the little input receptacle, right, that the mixer has or the snake has. So what my trick is to kind of look where the wall is in the back, like where the the little prongs stick out of, and I try to match up about where that is. And on the pig hog cables, you'll see this little indentation here. This is about where the tape needs to go. So right about here, there we go. You can kind of see that indentation there where I've put the tape next to. So it's got to go just below there, and this should be able to comfortably fit into a snake or mixer input just fine. And then we're going to take another strip of tape to make our second stripe. And for the second stripe, I again need there to be distance so that it's easily identifiable as 2 different stripes. So I'll put it right about here where this shoulder part that unscrews kind of meets this tapered part of the shoulder there, and so we're just going to go right about there. I hope this turns out to not blurry or anything on the camera, but we'll see how it goes. So this tape is a little bit more difficult. It's not going to look as neat and pretty as the other stripe because it's tapered. But as long as we're on there, again, from a longer distance away, you can easily tell that this is 2 stripes. Very distinct from our single stripe, right? So what this does is a few things. It allows us to use fewer colors in our color coding scheme for the entire front ensemble. And it allows us to assign 1 single color per instrument, which is very handy. So for example, in this case, Marimba 1 is designated the color red, and because of that, we're able to trace the colors very easily back to that particular instrument. So for example, if you all of a sudden stop getting signal from one of your Marimba 1 microphones, well then you're looking for a cable, something in the cabling chain that uses the color red. The female connectors here, again, I'm placing that first stripe of tape directly below the button, just like we did before. And as you might guess, the second stripe of tape is just going to go below that. And yes, the connector is tapered. The Proco cables are a little bit easier to put a second stripe of tape on because of the way that those are shaped. But with these pig hog cables, I'm just putting these on here the best I can. I just want to make sure that the tape grabs on there and that we're adding tension, stretching the tape out a little bit as we go, so that boom, there we go. We've got 2 stripes of tape, and again, even from further away, we can still tell that is 2 stripes of tape. Very distinct from the 1 stripe counterpart. Yeah. So this is the single stripe, double stripe system. The way that I designate it is I'll usually assign the single stripe to the high-end microphone, and I'll assign the double stripe to the low end, the low octave microphone. And for synthesizers, the single stripe is typically the left channel, and the double stripe is typically the right channel. That easy. So that's single stripe, double stripe on XLR cables. Let's take a quick look at a set of 1/4" cables. Now the way that we apply the tape is the exact same, where I hold the first bit of tape on with my thumb and then stretch it out and then put it around. You don't need quite as much length on your cut of tape for 1/4" as you may imagine. It's a much thinner diameter. But again, here I've got a synth channel that's the left synth channel and then the right synth channel. Single stripe, double stripe. That easy. And then you can also apply the same concept for your adapter cables, such as the balanced 1/4" to XLR. So this cable has 2 little stripes on the connector to give us the TRS, the tip, ring, and sleeve. And then that goes to male XLR. So this is a great cable for going from something like a higher end synthesizer like the Yamaha Montage, or a device that has a balanced output such as pretty much any audio interface. This is what you need. So this could go straight from your audio interface directly into your snake or your mixer, and you do not need a DI box. This is the cable among all of the cables that pretty much everybody needs, but not everybody really ever has. I've consulted with many schools, and on my first visit, it's been like, oh, you need this cable. So I've learned, I just carry these with me, like I carry a small inventory in the car these days, so that I can make sure people get hooked up with these when they need it. So if you are one of those, if you're not sure if you need this, shoot me an email or reach out through the contact page on my website. You can let me know what you have, and I'm happy to help you figure out. But the color coding is the exact same. We've got a male connector, we've got a 1/4" connector. There you have it. Pretty straightforward. And for those of you that use the D'Addario Modular Snake systems, I will show you a pro tip that is very handy, because if you look at the end of the connector, you'll notice it's not perfectly rectangular. It's kind of this trapezoidal shape where the very ends here are tapered in a little bit. So there is a correct and an incorrect way of hooking these together, right? So my pro tip for you is to only put tape on one side of the connector instead of wrapping tape all the way around this whole thing. Just put a piece of tape on one side, whichever side is facing up and is easy to see, so that when your students go to connect these, they can very easily see which way it goes, which way is the correct way. Just like that. Because what happens is if they can't figure out which direction it goes and they're trying to mash it together and it's not right, well, that is a recipe for getting the little pins inside there mashed up and bent and crooked, and then the whole thing doesn't work. So make sure if you're using these, you only put tape on one particular side of the DB25 connector, which is the one that looks like this or like this. Now this is the Modular Snake System stage box, but this is essentially what you would also be working with if you have something like the Hosa Little Bro Sub Snake, which is something that I recommend quite often and is actually the default recommendation in my cabling packages. In this particular case, the customer needed the Modular Snake System because they're going to have a drum set, and I want their drum set cables and microphone cables to be plugged into this before they even start warming up, like when they unload. And then I want the core cable, the Modular Snake, to be able to plug into this. So anyhow, the stage box, this metal box, is the exact same. And I've actually already color coded this, but I thought I would give you a quick look as to what that looks like. I mean, it's, again, some aspects of this are real straightforward, but here we go, right, where I'm just putting a little cut of tape over the number of the channel, right? And so we've got, in this case, we've got kick drum, snare drum, high, mid, and floor tom, and then we have a vibraphone that's going to be plugged in to orange here. So you'll see I've got all of this mapped out and planned out before any of this is even going to, get shipped out to the customer, because I want to make sure that when they open the package, everything is just ready to go. All they're going to need to do is unbox everything and attach it to their instruments, and then boom, they're ready to go. But again, in this case, it's real easy to just put the colored tape on top. And then I would also probably do something, for example, I think with this particular group, let me see. They're going to have 3 snakes, and this is going to be designated as the color white. So this would be their white snake. So I would put a strip of white tape along the front here. And let's actually do that together while I'm thinking about it, because I might forget, and I don't want to forget. So in this instance, what I'm doing is, again, taking a strip of tape here. We're going to cut off our length, and this is just going to go right here on the end of the snake. And I do want to try to get it, to look somewhat good. Like, I don't want it to look totally crooked. There we go. And then we could write drum kit plus vibe on the end or something like that. I'm not really a fan of writing letters and words on the colored tape there, because I think that adds to the cognitive load. And the whole idea behind all of this is to reduce the amount of cognitive load on your students and on your parent volunteers and yourself. We just want to know that the snake with the color white on the end goes to the drum kit. That's all we really need to know. So there we go. That's a quick look at how I would color code a box, a snake box like this. Again, this is by D'Addario for their Modular Snake system, but you'll find this exact type of metal box with the Little Bro Subsnake by Hosa. That's all I've got for you in today's video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me for a few minutes. Don't forget to check out the link to the Lowe's webpage for the 3M35 tape that I use. Again, link in the video description. And while you're down there, also consider dropping this video a like while you're checking that out. That is very much appreciated. And I'm also curious as to what type of color coding system you might use for your far ensemble, or if you have a particular type of electrical tape that you like to use. Leave me a comment down below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much again, my friends. Take care. I'll see you in the next one.